Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. My name again is Mark Webster, and it is my absolute honor and pleasure to be with each of you today. Before I begin, I want to say a special thanks to Dr. Khallad for his gracious invitation for me to present to the conference here today, and to continue to acknowledge the very significant importance the relationship that Oracle has with RTA. It is a relationship that is very important to me personally and to Oracle corporately, so my thanks to Dr. Khallad. The talk I've prepared for you today is going to take about 20 to 25 minutes and really talk about the increasing and growing importance of sustainability across the construction lifecycle. And our belief that in order to affect that, we as an industry need to do much better from a collaboration and from a digital tool perspective. So let's begin, firstly, just to kind of give you a sense of my organization experience. My journey here in project management spans a little over the last 2 decades. I was with a small organization many, many years ago by the name of Primavera Systems that many here in the audience may know, who really began the journey in helping to enable project management and schedulers, and to this day, very proud of the fact that our scheduling application continues to be the industry standard for any complex projects. Since that, roughly 10 years ago, I've had the privilege of running the global construction and engineering industry unit at Oracle, and we deliver to organizations that plan, build, and operate critical assets and infrastructure. And the experience that we've gained over the last 10 years is we've participated and been delighted to partner with organizations in the delivery of more than $9 trillion worth of construction activity. We've managed more than 4 million individual projects and programs and initiatives. And today, we have a repository that contains nearly 2 billion documents that essentially document the life cycle from project initiation through asset handover. And importantly and lastly, on a monthly basis, our organization is responsible for the distribution of payment between general contractors and subcontractors that result in about $9 billion worth of payments monthly. And what we've seen over the past decade in particular, and perhaps for me over the last 20 years, thinking about project execution has always been focusing on what is in different parts of the world either referred to as the iron triangle or the golden triangle. It's around cost, it's around time, it's around scope. But what we've seen over the past 2 or 3 years in particular is the growing importance that maybe perhaps forms the 4th leg of a stool, and that is sustainability. It is becoming an ever-increasing component both in demand from governments and from owners and their bidding and tendering requirements, and it is becoming a focus of differentiation for delivery organizations to highlight their capabilities and attributes in delivering projects in a more sustainable way. So let's talk about perhaps why that is so important. So firstly, when we kind of look and assess the broad marketplace for construction, it's a massive industry. By any account today, the industry is about $15 billion. It is anticipated to grow at a greater rate than 5%, 5.5% as I think you can see on the slide. It's about 2% faster than global GDP is projected. And what's causing or driving that growth in the market is a number of factors. Firstly, we see that all nation states around the world are pursuing significant infrastructure development. That development is being driven both in the need for new infrastructure as well as the restoration and modernization of existing infrastructure to serve our global citizens. And as the population nears nearly 10 billion humans by mid-century, the need for more infrastructure in all of its forms becomes a challenge for every nation state, and it is becoming a massive source of investment. You will see across the world, certainly here in Dubai and across the Gulf, we see in the US with the Jobs Act and the Infrastructure Investment Act, billions of dollars being made available to fund the needs that they have in serving their citizens. I think secondly, a significant driver in construction activity is in the reshoring and the reindustrialization of the manufacturing base. As all organizations and nations kind of exited and recovered from the pandemic period, the ability to secure and to diversify your supply chain has caused many parts of the world to reinvest in bringing manufacturing facilities and industrial production facilities, which is causing significant growth in construction activity. And then lastly, there's a massive investment taking place in energy. And that is in the form of energy transition as organizations try to seek more sustainable and cleaner ways to provide power. And specifically, if you look at power demand across the globe, one of the significant areas driving what is, I guess, the first time in many years in the utility or in the power industry, actually a demand growth that they've not experienced. Demand growth for most utilities around the world has been flat for about the last 14 years. This year, the demand for energy in nearly every part of the world is growing, and one of the significant contributors to that growth is in the form of data centers. There was a release from the Department of Energy just last month in the US that estimates that the electricity required to power data centers in the US alone more than tripled in the last decade. The forecast for that electricity requirement is that it will at least double, if not triple again, by 2028. And if that prediction is to hold true, data centers by themselves would command 12% of the US electrical capacity. 12%. So there is a massive rise in construction activity around the world, and it is creating what is an ever-increasing focus and challenge around sustainability. So when we look at sustainability, one way to look at it is from an emissions perspective. And the World Green Building Council estimated that about 39% of all the emissions that are emitted today, in fact, come from buildings. 28% of that comes from actual operation and use of the asset or the building. It is the heating, the cooling, the lighting for both our residential and our business environments. 11% of those emissions come from the materials and the construction process itself. So there's a pretty significant carbon impact to buildings and construction in general. What perhaps the slide doesn't fully demonstrate is that more than 50% of those emissions actually occur and are emitted before the asset is in use. It is that upfront or embedded carbon that occurs through all the production and all the material development that goes into these massive, ambitious capital programs. It's found in the mixing of cement. It is found in the creation of steel. So there is a massive emissions impact to all of the construction activity that is happening around the world. And if you think about our ability to offset, control, diminish that growth, it requires a huge focus on the built environment. The offset or embedded carbon is difficult to handle. That's more of a manufacturing challenge. So as a community in the construction industry, our requirement is to try and figure out how to slow and minimize the growth of emissions in the built environment. We think collaboration and digital are essential components to achieving that. Let's look at it from a material usage perspective. There's a recent article that projects that by 2060, the world's material use will in fact double. And that's in all forms. 1/3 of that material growth is specific to construction. 1/3. And when you think about the doubling of the resource and the amount of things we're consuming, and you contemplate that today, 1/3 of all the materials used in construction activity end up in a landfill. Landfills around the world are at near peak capacity, and 1/3 of all of the content of those landfills comes from our construction activity. It is in both the building and the demolition of those assets or buildings or structures or whatever it may be that are going to landfills and filling them up. What's more damning, if you pardon my use of the word, is the fact that 13% of all materials delivered to a job site go straight to a landfill without use. If we think about project management and we think about project delivery and scheduling and supply chain, there is no reason that problem should exist. And it is why we believe wholeheartedly that through better collaboration, through better planning, and through better digital tools, we can make a material change in the amount of waste that is occurring in the construction industry today. So we have a big industry. We have a lot of emissions. We have a lot of material use. That's the beginning of the journey. We have, and I have felt for the past 2.5 years, that the level of ambition in the construction industry is accelerated at an extraordinary pace. We are seeing more project activity, more building activity, more engagement than we've ever witnessed. And as we went to validate the sense that there was tremendous growth in this marketplace, we found a couple of really interesting pieces of information that validated that fact. The first comes from the UN. And the UN has assessed that 75% of the infrastructure that will exist in 2050 does not exist today. So let's take a journey for a second. You're in a big hotel, in a beautiful city, in an amazing country. Multiply that by the region, multiply it by the globe. All of that today combined represents 1/4 of what will be here in 2050. Blow anybody mind? There's a lot coming. Secondly, the estimation from the International Energy Agency projects that there will be the additional need for 2.6 trillion square feet of building stock. 2.6 trillion, and I apologize, I can't translate that into meters for you. It's a big number. Put some context around how big of a number it is. In order to have 2.6 trillion additional square feet of building stock requires the city of Manhattan to be built every month for 40 consecutive years. 2060, we're going to build new cities the size of Manhattan every month for 40 years. It isn't that that's exactly what's going to happen, but it's representative of the amount of need that will be required to serve the growing population, the ever-increasing urbanization, and all of the things that we're going to demand of our governments around the world. So this problem, even though it's large today, is about to become much larger. So there was some seminal research done back in the early 2000s by a Danish expert who really studied mega projects. And he captured in a book called Mega Projects and Risk, the anatomy of ambition. And these are statistics that have been long cited in our industry. In some ways, I view them as kind of shame statistics that suggest that 9 out of every 10 project, infrastructure project in particular, in fact goes over budget. 7 out of those 10 projects also go over their planned or estimated time duration. And more than half of those projects blow out both. They're way over budget and they're way over time. And so, where I see these as indictments that we are not doing well enough and need to do better, it is also very clear to us that these are, in fact, solvable problems. And we think that the critical requirements to solving them are found in collaboration and aggressive use of digital technology. So not long ago, back in the fall, was visiting with the head of one of the largest EPCs in the world, and in a discussion around how do we improve the industry and the things that we're collaborating on today together. Really simple observation. The simplest way to improve sustainability is to deliver on time. And I don't know that I fully understood exactly what he meant until I thought it through and had some time to reflect on it. But when you go back to the material use and the waste, and the simple fact is that the amount of rework and the amount of urgent work that occurs because of failures in the project planning and execution requires a massive amount of additional manpower. It requires the additional use of resources. It requires rework. And so the simplest way is also, we think, a very achievable way, which is how can we assure better outcomes? And by doing that alone, it will improve sustainability. So what are the critical elements of that from our vantage point? Well, first of all, I think we look at this as a connected ecosystem. For us, across this life cycle of organizations that plan, build, and operate, it is a multi-party engagement. There are owners, both private and public. There are, in some markets, head contractors, general contractors, and then there's a massive delivery network of providers, of trade individuals who actually perform work at job site. We believe the simplest way to help ensure that projects get done on time, on budget, and with less waste is by connecting all of those individuals from the beginning of the life cycle through asset handover. It's about a connected ecosystem. It is about all of those project participants working, as we see it, in a common data environment, and having all of the documentation and communications housed in a single location so that everybody can work together. It's somewhat like an orchestra, where we want to make certain that that orchestra is conducted together and everybody's working from the same sheet of music. We think about scheduling and project management as a continued critical element to delivering on time and delivering more sustainably. But project management for us has evolved. When I first entered this market, project management was about critical path methodology schedulers. It was a small collection of folks, usually locked away somewhere, producing really complex schedules that then in some form made their way to the job site where people were expected to conform with that. That doesn't really work that way in reality. The way we see scheduling is that it needs to be democratized. It needs to be broadened in its use and application. So where we are focused in our capabilities is continuing to serve the advanced and complex needs of scheduling, because it's required, but also to expand that and make scheduling easier and more available to all project participants, to support things like lean, to support things like task management, but to make those same capabilities part of the critical planning and management infrastructure that long has been served as a back office function. And so I think from our perspective, if you want to build more sustainably, we believe focusing on connecting the ecosystem into a digital environment is an essential component. So let's talk broadly about some of the technologies that we're pretty excited about, and these are not technologies that are all delivered from Oracle. In fact, very few of them are. It'd be a failed attempt if I tried to spend the next 6 minutes talking about all the technology that's flooding into the construction industry. 7 years ago, we commissioned a study to go out and identify how many organizations identified themselves as a construction software management provider. And at that time, 7 years ago, that number was in the dozens, wasn't very large. 3 years ago, when we did a scan of the environment, there were 2,600 startups that identified themselves as construction software management. There is a massive amount of proliferation coming to the job site and to the industry. Candidly, some of the digital technologies are capabilities looking for problems, but there's some really meaningful work that's coming to this marketplace that we're very excited about. Like all technology vendors, I'm probably required by contract to say the words AI 47 times in a talk. I'm not going to do that, so I'm probably in violation. But the realities for us is that AI presents unique and fundamental benefits to changing the dynamic of some of the problem statements that we set out before. It brings insight and information into the decision-making process throughout the life cycle that we again think will improve project outcomes and will improve it in a more sustainable way. So if we look at some of the ways we're looking at AI and machine learning, we're looking at how do we make it more predictive, in that how do we anticipate events in the planning from the very onset and not wait for events to occur before we acknowledge them. We're looking at how do we start to generate schedules in an automated way so that we don't have to consume valuable and precious time of our delivery experts scanning through tender documents, requests for proposals, specifications. AI can summarize and ingest all of those documents, and in less than 5 minutes, create a summary of that we can then start to generate a schedule that probably is about 60 to 80% accurate. We think that that's a fundamental chance for improvement and opportunity, and we're pretty excited about the early evidence that we're seeing, at least on the planning side. I think second, when you look at what's happening from a visualization perspective, 4 or 5 years ago, BIM was an acronym, and it was something everybody was talking about. Today, it is a reality. BIM has, in fact, become a de facto capability for organizations around the world, and it is that advanced visualization and the ability to use modeling from design through build and through asset handover that has pretty fundamental implications. When we think about the ability to use a model to prevent work from being done incorrectly, we are reducing the need for rework. We are reducing the need for us to demolish a structure that may be perfectly good, but may have been put in the wrong place in the building or on the job site. So BIM has become fundamental in its application to helping organizations to deliver better project outcomes and to do so more sustainably. I think another example from the visualization perspective comes in the form of GIS systems. Again, when we think about linear assets, and whether or not it's, if it's road, bridge, or rail, if it's transmission lines, if it's water lines, the ability to use GIS in combination with our planning capabilities and with our project controls capabilities gives a level of control, fidelity, and insight that help things get corrected before they go wrong. And again, I go back to the simplest way to improve sustainability is to deliver on time. And I think lastly, for us, a connected job site is a requirement. There is little that any of us do anymore that isn't in the palm of our hand. What we're seeing now is taking this tool that every individual has and bringing new capabilities at the job site, at the trailer, in order to provide them with insight, to provide them with expertise, to provide them with visual information to perform their job functions better. And we think, again, that all of these technologies in an integrated way, used across the entire life cycle from design through build and construction and all the way through asset handover, is what produces better outcomes and, again, produces a more sustainable environment. So I want to be clear. I am a digital proponent, but it is not just about digital. We are wholeheartedly clear that in order for our organizations to achieve greater success, it remains the combination of people, process, and technology to do this job better. We are very proud about the work and support and collaboration we have, in particular with PMI. Our two organizations together have, in fact, authored a new certification course called Construction Professional, or DCP. We're seeing great uptake across the world for individuals and project participants and project management professionals, really leaning into evolving their PMI certification to now extending that with the additional capability of applying that in complex construction activities. And it's a wonderful course. We're also very proud to support an organization by the name of CII, which is the Construction Innovation Institute. And in working with them, we are encapsulating in our digital capabilities all of the processes and best practices that they are in fact learning from all of the building organizations that support CII. And it's around things like advanced work packaging that we're being able to now set up standard configurations for organizations to begin that is again starting to deliver pretty substantial results. So this is an unbelievably exciting time in the construction industry. We are super proud to be a part of this community. And thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your conference.